Unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard that the Canadian real estate market is blowing up. Property valuations are skyrocketing. And that sounds like it'd be pretty good news if you're a homeowner. And it probably is. But it could also throw a really big wrinkle into your estate plan. Especially if you own a vacation property, like maybe a cottage. Or if you have other secondary properties, like rentals. If that sounds like you, well, stick around, because this video is for you. Okay, so I'm guessing if you own any real estate at all, then you're probably aware that the Canadian real estate market is blowing up. Property valuations are through the roof. And that's great news if you're a homeowner. But it can also cause some problems to your estate plan. Let me explain. Let's say you own a vacation property, a cottage that you'd like to see passed on to your children. Or maybe you have a small portfolio of rental properties that you'd like to see passed on. Well, any property beyond your primary residence is going to be subject to capital gains tax. And that can cause a significant problem to your estate plan. The good news is that with some careful planning today, you can mitigate the risk of future capital gains and ensure that these properties can get passed on the way that you envision. Okay, let's get into it. So for today's example, we're going to think about a cottage. And we're going to think about Bill and Sarah, who bought this cottage 10 years ago for $300,000. They scrimped and saved and built up enough down payment that they could buy this vacation property. And their daughter Jennifer has grown up there. They've literally gone to the cottage every weekend for the past 10 years and summer vacations, and it's been awesome. When they pass away, they want Jennifer to be able to inherit this cottage. So this cottage they bought 10 years ago for $300,000. With the crazy real estate market such that it is, that cottage today is worth $1 million. $1 million. Now, that's a huge growth in the value of this property, but it's really not that far beyond the realm of possibility given the increases in real estate values that we've seen over the last little while. So what does that mean? Well, if Bill and Sarah were to die today, and that property has grown from $300,000 at purchase to $1 million on the date of death, well, that accounts for a $700,000 capital gains. So how does that get taxed? Well, capital gains tax is based on 50% of the capital gain gets added to your income and taxed at your regular tax rate. So in this case, if Bill and Sarah were to pass away, $700,000 would be divided by 2, so $350,000 would be added to their income in the year of their passing and would flow through into the estate. So what does that mean? It means that if you do that math, that's about a $140,000 tax bill on the capital gains of their cottage. Now, that's a significant tax bill. If they don't have enough money, liquid money, in the estate in order to pay that tax bill, then what happens? Well, the daughter Jennifer could kick in some money to pay that tax bill so that she could assume the cottage. Or, worst case scenario is if there's not enough liquid funds in the estate, well, then we have to start liquidating assets in order to pay the tax bill. Ergo, they would probably have to sell the cottage in order to pay the tax bill. Think about that for a second. The cottage that they wanted to pass on to their daughter has become so valuable that it would have to be sold in order to pay the tax bill on the cottage. Imagine that for a second. So the question then becomes, what strategies can we put in place today in order to mitigate that future capital gains tax burden that we know is coming? There's no way around it. It's gonna hit. The question is, can we do things today in order to make that capital gains tax less of an issue for our heirs when they go to inherit our property? And the answer is yes. There's a couple of options. Let's look at option number one. Option number one would be investing heavily today in order to build up a large enough liquid nest egg, if you will, within that would flow to the estate, which would be enough money to cover that capital gains exposure. That's one option. Understand that any of the growth on those investments would also be taxed within the estate. What are the other options? Well, probably the best option would be to implement a joint last to die life insurance contract on Bill and Sarah. What that means is we would implement a whole life participating policy on Bill and Sarah with Jennifer as the beneficiary. So that means it would be joint last to die. So the last of Bill and Sarah to die would trigger the death benefit payment directly to Jennifer, the daughter, the beneficiary, and that life insurance death benefit payment would be tax-free. So we would design that life insurance contract in order to grow over time to keep pace with the estimated future capital gains exposure, so that whenever that death occurs and it triggers that capital gains, that life insurance policy would pay a death benefit directly to Sarah, allowing her to pay the capital gains tax and assume the cottage. So, as you can see, the crazy real estate valuations and the crazy growth within the real estate market, although in a lot of cases is great news, it can provide some significant challenges to estate planning. And at the end of the day, we want to be able to mitigate the risk of those future capital gains. So, that, my friends, is the value of advice. So if you'd like help with your financial plan, or if you'd like help with your estate plan, or frankly, if you just like a second opinion on your existing plans, feel free to give me a call. And with that, take good care.